Hi, Suka.
Sawubona.
Hi.
Dr. Dlamini, thank you for welcoming us to your office. And we'd like to congratulate you, on the successful launch of the CSIR C3. The day was so magical. It was something different, out of the ordinary. What are the reflections or feedback did you receive after the event?
Yes, no, thank you. That's so cool. And welcome. I must say it was an event that surpassed our expectations. But I want to start off perhaps by expressing my most sincere word of gratitude to the colleagues that worked very hard to get us to this point. I planted the seed, and a number of colleagues worked very hard to ensure that this seed gets nurtured to the point now we have a tree that we perhaps over time will be able to enjoy the shade that this tree will provide. And a number of colleagues worked behind the scenes, as I said, to ensure that this is realized. From the executive, we had Dr. Rachel Chikwamba as the executive sponsor for this project. We had a number of work streams looking at issues such as the internal operating environment, looking at our IP portfolio to ensure that when we go out to engage the outside world with regards to what we have to offer, indeed we have an IP portfolio that we can transfer into this new entity that we have created. We had colleagues looking at regulatory related issues, PFMA, Companies Act, and all the regulations that we needed to ensure that we comply with. And they all work very, very hard to help us to understand this terrain, so that when we go out and say here's an entity that is going to commercialize the intellectual property of the CSIR, we can tick all of these boxes. And here I can mention people like Innocence Ziba, Kenny Tenza, and Dr. Anthony Lostrach, I think, and a lot of other people, Melissa from legal, and a lot of other colleagues who contributed towards this work. So one is very, very grateful for the hard work that they had to put into this. I think at the same time I must mention that when we run projects like this in the organization, we actually ask a lot more from colleagues, because the work that they need to do on a day-to-day basis is still there. We don't take that away, and we sort of add on this responsibility, So there's a lot of sacrifice, long hours, and one is really, really very grateful. But coming back to your point, I think it's important that I put this context. The launch went very well. We had close to 200 people that came to the launch, and most of those coming from outside of the CSIR, from the private sector, from funding agencies, IDC, TIA, and others, and from government departments, that supported us in the launch. These are people that were there in person, at the launch. We also had the virtual platforms that we used to broadcast the event, and there we also had close to 200, people that were watching, our YouTube channel and observing what was happening. So it went very well. It went very well. In fact, now we are having a number of inquiries, from the people outside of the CSIR wanting to know, how they can engage with the work that we are doing. The minister gave a very, very good address and demonstrated the support that the minister and the department have for an initiative of this nature. I think this initiative is really coming at the right time. We have now the decadal plan, which has a very strong focus on the translation of research into impact. And we strongly believe that this initiative will contribute towards achieving that objective. So, as I said, one is really, really very delighted about this. I think it has really shown that our thinking about what the country needs at this point in time to drive the commercialization of intellectual property that is created, not just within the CSIR, but within the broader national system of innovation, particularly in the public sector, is indeed,
great. That's amazing. You know, the last time we spoke, we were touching on a lot of things, you know, about, it was, as you said, it was still a seed. Things have obviously, developed since then. How will this entity work? Just tell us the mechanics of it, what you can share with us in terms of, the vision and how the operations of this new enterprise will work.
Yes, so as we said during the launch, this entity will create an ecosystem which consists of IP coming out of the CSIR on the one hand. You then have entrepreneurs who will work at converting this intellectual property into viable business opportunities. And then thirdly, you then have partners who will bring in capital to invest into these companies that will be created out of the intellectual property coming out of the CSIR. So the entity will bring together this vibrant ecosystem, of partnerships that are trying to drive for a common objective, to industrialize and to create companies out of the intellectual property coming out of the CSIR, but not just limited to the CSIR. I think over time, we'll open this up to also bring in IP from any other part, of South Africa. The entity will hold, all the IP coming out of the CSIR. So in a way, it becomes a holding company for all CSIR intellectual property. It will have unlimited right in terms of trading with this IP through license agreements, to the startup companies that will be created, or even to existing enterprises that might be interested in taking this IP to market. It will then also create this network of entrepreneurs and investors who will invest in the commercialization of the intellectual property coming out of the CSIR. It will be a wholly owned, CSIR wholly owned enterprise. It will have its managing director, and it will have a board that the company accounts to, because it must be ring-fenced, from what I will refer to perhaps as the CSR mothership, which is the current configuration that we have of the organization. It has to operate independently of the CSIR. Of course, the CSR becomes the shareholder, the only shareholder in the entity. Therefore, the entity will have to account to the CSR in terms of its business. There will be arrangements in terms of how IP gets, I'm going to put this in code, transferred to this entity for it to be able to trade and to do business with the IP of the CSIR. So that is in a nutshell, what this entity does and how it will then interface with the organization.
That's amazing. You said something earlier. You counted a lot of colleagues who basically did sort of a dual role. And I think my last question in closing would be to ask, as the CSIR, as the mothership, the colleagues in the mothership, how do we then support this new startup, or this hub that we're now creating, this innovation hub? How do we support it? What do we need to do to get behind the new leadership or the new company, as we'd say?
No, definitely. I think we all have a role to play. It starts from us creating visibility about this entity, and making the general public know that CSIR has done this now. We've created this enterprise, and we're looking for partners to come and work with us. So we all must be, in a way, champions, to the external environment, about what the possibilities that exist, with regards to what this entity brings. So that is at one level. But what this entity does also is that it creates an opportunity for all our scientists to become entrepreneurial. In fact, that in South Africa we have what's called the IPR Act. And in the IPR Act, it's very clearly stated that whenever a public entity like ourselves commercializes intellectual property, the inventors of that IP can share in the benefit that gets, whatever benefit comes out from the commercialization of the intellectual property that is sitting within the public sector. So there's an opportunity for all our researchers, to participate, whether directly or indirectly, in terms of the financial benefits that will come out of the intellectual property that will be commercialized by this entity. I think that, in my view, is enough motivation for all our researchers to want somehow to ensure that whatever work that they are doing finds way into this entity, so it can get applied in government, in industry, and really create impact. I think for me, having been a researcher myself, I would say that I think perhaps one of the most satisfying things that you can do as a researcher is to see, the outcomes of your research being applied in real life. So it really creates an opportunity for all our researchers, to see the fruits of their work, making impact in society, in government, as well as in industry. So I think we must all champion this, because it really creates an opportunity for all of us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dlamini. That is inspiring. And I hope, I didn't do research, but I think I'll start getting into it now so that I can also become an entrepreneur in some sort of way. Thank you so much. And, as we say, the CSIR spirit is touching lives through innovation. And now with this new company, we're now going to see the fruits of those innovations. And I hope for our researchers and the rest of our colleagues, it's just another push or another fire under our bellies to work even harder. Thank you so much for inviting us over to connect. Until next time.
Thank you very much, Soko. Thank you for your time.